Hello, this is the biggest ballooning pioneer interview we have ever had. It's going to be a good one. I really expect a lot of great stories, a lot of history, a lot of things that came from the beginning. This is Becky Wiglin, and we're at the National Balloon Museum in 2009 in August. And 2019 in August, sorry. We're going to start over here and introduce everybody, and they're going to tell you who it is, and then we're going to start reminiscing.
Hi, I'm Dave Endress, Madison, Wisconsin.
Patty Kramer, Columbus, Ohio.
I'm Mary Jo Burt from McAllen, Texas.
Abby Bauer, Columbus, Ohio.
Dottie Humbert, Battle Creek, Michigan.
Hi, Sarah Burke, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Megan Burke, McAllen, Texas.
Dana Burke, Garland, Texas.
Eric Barnum, Toledo, Ohio.
Debbie Harding,
Can you see her?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Linda Videla, Swarthmore, PA.
Earl Videla, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Ken Kramer, Columbus, Ohio.
Julie Kramer, Tampa, Florida.
Alan Yost, Tampa, Florida.
Debbie Spaeth, Jackson, Wisconsin.
Eleanor Videla, Bala Kenwood, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles outside of Philadelphia.
John Davis, Denver, Colorado.
Jim Burke, McAllen, Texas.
Jenny Sweeney, Elgin, Illinois. Kit DeWitt, Wayne, Illinois.
That's a house full. All right, our three inductees this year are Jim Burke, and then excuse me, Eleanor Vidalia and Nick Somm. And John Davis and his sister are going to be speaking for Nick Somm, but he's probably up there telling him what to say. Anyway, and so we're going to be talking, and we're going to talk about how a lot of this got early. A lot of these are early ballooning, and it's not the same as now because they all had, you used maps or you used string with a circle. I love that story. Anyway, now it's all computerized, and they don't even look at the landscape or anything. And there's so much history in here; it's scary. Now, Mr. Burke was our balloon meister, balloon director for how many years?
6, I think.
6 here. All right, he has 4 lovely daughters back there, and we never get the younger version because they had to put up with so much when the father's either ballooning or meistering or whatever. So the 2 oldest ones, which one are you? Okay. All right. What do you remember from coming here? What did you have to do? And like some of them, like we didn't have any radios, so how did you check in? Or who was in charge of finding the baggie or what, those kind of things?
We kind of, I don't know, Megan will probably have a different perspective, but I remember being fairly young when we were flying in Indianola or working with Dad when he was managing the event, and you sort of just did what you were asked to do, and that might be take these baggies over to someone else, bring the maps over here, we have copies that need to go out, and you just kind of did what was needed, which I think is pretty typical of most people who are staffing an event. I do remember I think we missed the pig baggie incident.
Yeah,
we were both too young for that.
That was probably a good one to
Probably
miss.
good. We were smaller than those pigs at that time. I just remember it was, I think, because we all grew up with it, the idea that you got up before dawn to go do a thing was just something that wasn't a real shock or a real surprise. So it was just part of the thing that our family did together. So as far as you just got up and did it. And if you needed crew, I think all of us grew up crewing, and Dad was really good about giving us crew jobs that we were capable of doing depending on our age. And I think crown crown line was usually your first crew job because he could put you out there and not worry about what was happening. You had to sort of graduate up to being able to, you know, monitor the fan or hold the mouth.
I'm still not good at running the fan.
And it just was something that as we got older and more capable of taking on more things, that he would give us more advanced things to do. Sometimes surprisingly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really little when we would go to Indianola. And I remember there were lots of other kids my age. You know, it's a family activity, even
Yeah.
when kids don't want it to be. So there was a huge herd of kids who are my age, who are balloonists now today. I still see them all the time. And so I think the idea was a lot of parents just like stuck all the kids together and you kind of fend for yourselves until you are told to do otherwise. I think I slept in the truck a lot while we were that's how young I was when we came to Indianola.
Breakfast was whatever you could dig out of the cooler, which was sometimes things like Oreos and Pepsi.
Other people's parents fed you a lot of times. So like, who's man?
It was a
truck
big,
had more snacks?
it was
That's
a
where
big
we went.
family affair. We
Yeah.
did. I just wondered, you know, they were talking yesterday. I think Mr. Barnum was saying he had all those wonderful sayings about, all right, you got to do it this way, and you only got one chance. Was he a little calmer with you, or did you have to get
Says
it all?
right there, right there.
And the sound right there.
Silence. I will say,
I'll call you back.
Dick.
I think.
Calling it every
I
day.
think it depended. I think, you know, the thing that really surprised me was the day that he
Seriously,
put me. He was like, get in the basket, you're gonna learn to read this map. And I was like, okay.
Hang up.
And because it was in the midst of competition, yeah, it was sort of like, this is what you're doing, figure it out, and don't interrupt me because I'm flying and I have to pay attention to where we're going. And it was a little intimidating at first, but I did learn, and he was a great teacher. He was a great teacher as a geology professor, and he was a great teacher when you were learning about ballooning, when you were learning about competition.
And Sarah spent a lot more time in the basket with him than I did.
Oh
I
my
spent a
God.
lot more time on the ground.
Where it was
So-
Maybe she could see over the edge or something that way.
All of my, I guess, you know, more than 20 years has mostly been on staffs with him and less time spent in the air reading the basket, doing the navigating that Sarah did. We did much different things where Dad's ballooning was concerned. So I had different responsibilities than Sarah. I can still read a map, but there was not so much time in the air that I spent with Dad.
Well, he had everything covered. All right, how about the other two? And you didn't come here, but did you help him in other races? I mean, he's been in Texas for a million years, so.
Yeah, we've. Wow, it's a little estimate. Yeah, we've both been crew for Dad for a long time. That was kind of where my assistance hit its limits. I was always the scrawny, allergic, asthmatic one.
Oh.
So not much good for a whole lot in the balloon. Drag her through a cornfield. Yeah. Maybe some light ballast if the winds weren't too ferocious. I don't know. I've held up many an envelope mouth in my day. But
Yeah, it definitely started crewing. I remember particularly when I was old enough to drive, that I drove. When he was flying, I was driving. But when we were really young, we would go to an event in Michigan with him. Mom would drive us halfway, Megan and someone else would pick us up and take us to the event, and he was directing that event, so we would ride around, go to targets, help measure. And that for me has turned into being on measuring teams, and I do GPS downloading now and
Really?
wrangle all of the staff folk to make sure we're getting where we need to be. I coordinate all of the people.
So so his job is led to all of you broadening and going into a type of job.
Yeah, and we've all spent countless hours sleeping in the van, in the truck, on from point A to point B on the road for countless hours.
Their
We've all
first
done that.
car had a lift gate on the back. It was a 15-passenger van. Drove around.
I
Yeah.
still miss that van.
The first time we had actually been here, we were out in Nevada. Abby and I were both, I think I was third grade, you might have, third and fourth
I feel like
grade,
we were like
think.
8 or 9.
And we flew out there with his parents, but we drove home with him. And one of our stops was at Jackie and Burl Woodyard's house here in
Yeah.
Iowa.
Oh, they dearly thought so much of you. I heard that their daughter was here yesterday. Because I told her that you were coming, and so I don't know what she looks like, but she said yeah, she was there because you were there a lot. I mean, he just called them mom and dad. They were the rural relations. He started rural relations here, which has been very important. And one of the Woodruffs have started on there, and they're still basically run all of rural relations. So, well, good. Is there anything else that you ladies would like to put in here?
Sarah made a lot of money on the map.
So I get nostalgic now because we were looking, and I think I noticed a map the other day for the Indianola area, and all of those red and yellow zones were pre-printed.
Oh yeah.
And when I was working as his navigator, that was not the case. They would give you the map,
Yeah.
and there would be a master posted
Yep.
someplace near the briefing room,
Yeah.
and you would go down, and everyone would like jockey for position. And that I got to the point, again, as he's teaching me things, like piece at a time, I got to the point where that was one of the maps became my job.
Oh.
So he would be like, here's the map, go get the zones on there, don't mess
Don't mess it up.
because otherwise we'll have a problem. And I think one year we were at Battle Creek, and he hired me out.
Hired you out,
They were like,
huh?
oh, man,
Oh,
that
it's
looks
coming
great.
out.
He's like, well, my kid can do that. $25 she'll do that. Yeah, we started to learn all kinds of exciting new ways to, mark the maps so that you didn't have to rub the grease paint or the
yeah.
China markers off. We were using like line that you could get for, it was really used for printing and layout purposes, and you would take it, you just go and stick it down there. It was, yeah, we had it down to a science, but now I'm
good.
like, wait, so no one reads a map, no one has to put their own PZs on the map, what's going on here?
I know. We have like 3 balloonists that they call it going old school, and they still have the maps, and they're still hanging off the side, and they still do the longitude and latitude. And then these young pups come in, and they don't look at anything but these machines. They don't see where they're going. If it isn't on that machine, oh well.
Yeah.
And that takes the fun out of it. Yeah.
Well, Sid Cutter paid her $30 once to do all the intersections on the Indianola map. She'd put the coordinates on all of them, and once Sid paid her $30, then somebody else offered her $35.
Oh.
But it took all day to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, but what else did she have to do but make money?
I'm sure he had something for me to do. I'm sure it was done in between other tasks and other jobs, but.
Well, I think the nice thing too is that it's given us, we have an extended family, a lot of whom are here today. So a lot of these people, in our giant herd of folks, are extended family, but they've also been dad's staff for decades at this point. And so that's been a really lovely resource for us, not just in ballooning, but outside of ballooning. We see each other other times of the year. And we got to meet interesting people. Like I remember Nick Somm. My favorite part of Nick Somm as a kid, because he didn't really like kids that much, was in for the dogs.
Oh yeah.
And I loved dogs, and so I would go to Nick's vehicle just to see the dogs, and that was permissible. You're allowed to go visit the dogs. They were sitting in the ice bath. He took great care of those dogs, and I always remember thinking, like, this is great.
Yeah.
He had to, Jewel Cutter helped raise me from the age of like 4 to 9. So some of these people we really got to spend some time with and get to know, and all of those people who are still around today are still part of our family. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the best parts of ballooning anyway.
Yeah,
It shows how-
that's one of the things I always, when we've had a balloon for 20 years, and you all went to the same races, and you knew everybody's balloon, and it was, and were raised, the kids were all raised together, and it was just a family. Now everybody's changing balloons, and we got all these new ones, and I think I don't even know half of them. Every time we go to a party, I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, I have no clue. But yeah, all right. So have they said anything that you didn't know?
No, not really. I mean, they've been an active part, and then early on, Mary Jo came out here, and I remember flying one day and leaving my map behind, and I yelled back, "I need the map." She grabbed the map, and there was a little barbed wire fence in between where I was and where she was. She got to the barbed wire fence and got over it, and I got the map. So those were the days when she could run like a deer.
Did you jump like a deer? Well, did he ever leave the keys in his pocket? That's a good one around here. And then you had to go figure it out.
I remember being in the basket with him a few times where we left baggies with the crew, and the amount of very particular flying to get close enough to catch the baggie from the crew without touching anything on the ground, and without getting off track was pretty exciting.
Ah.
And then that got added to my list of tasks.
You make sure you had all the
We're now
baggies.
in charge of the baggies and the map.
He forgot a radio a time or two. And that was before cell phones, so you couldn't just
Oh yeah.
connect with them that way. You just followed along and hope for the best.
Yeah, we had CD radios. Everything. It's so different now. Okay. Anything more you want to ask and offer? Or this is the time when this all comes up in front of everyone.
Jewel Cutter is responsible for keeping an entire generation of ballooning children alive.
She'll be glad to
Jewel
hear that.
Cutter would see you and go, "Come on in here, and we got some food. Come on in." She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, she is. Oh, good. All right. All right. Well, we've got a lot of history here. We've got a lot of going on. I always wondered, between Nick and how two rockhounds got together. Did you, like he was a geologist and you were a geologist or taught geology. And when you were ballooning, did you only talk ballooning or did you throw a few rocks in there?
No, we talked occasionally about, he was a gold hound, and he was always after gold or uranium, and he'd find deposits of copper, and it was like, it's copper. I didn't want copper. And so we talked about that a lot. Nick hired me once I was on his staff, and he said, well, don't fly your balloon because you need to fly the Toyota balloon. He had a Toyota balloon. And so I was flying it, and I guess I've always flown that way. I had it into it. It was basically deflated on the way down to a target, and the thing was caving in, and Nick calls me on the radio and he says, if you're going to advertise, we need to see how Toyota is spelled. And then, occasionally I had balloon races that I had to fly the commercial balloon in, and so I hired Nick for the Columbus event, 98 degrees, and he was out there measuring markers, so I walked out and I said, Nick, can I help you? He said, what are you doing on my balloon field? And I said, well, I'm coming out to, he said, get the hell off my balloon field. I said, okay.
Yeah. So that's the last time you offered to help, all right?
Yeah, well, Nick and myself and Dave Livengood, and we were pretty closely knit. But what most people don't realize about Nick is that he was a practical joker, and most of his jokes sometimes would get out of hand. And Burl, there was a farmer out, I could probably drive to his place, I think his name was Charlie Amos.
Yes, it was.
longtime friend of Burl's. And Nick had stopped by because we'd been using Charlie's property and had dropped off a case of beer. And then Dave Livengood came by to see him and asked Charlie if everything was okay. And Charlie was pretty gruff and said, well, hell no, you know. And so Dave Livengood says, well, what can we do to, you know, make things right? And he said, well, Dave had his wife Connie with him. They were all in white. Well, you could slop the hogs because I don't want to get off the porch and go slop the hogs. And so Nick came roaring into the trailer and he said, oh, I got Livengoods. He said, they're out there slopping hogs. And so after they got done slopping the hogs, Livengood went up and said, is there anything else we can do? And Charlie Amos said, you know what caused all this? That damn Som dropped off warm beer. When Livengood pulled into the headquarters, I told Nick, I said, you've got to find a place to hide because he's going to kill you. When Livengood got out of the, and of course Burl's beside himself because he said, oh my God, Charlie Amos, one of my oldest friends, and they made Charlie mad. And Burl's like this, and I told Nick, I said, it's a small trailer, but you better find someplace to hide where we can get in and cool down. So Nick is standing on top of the toilet in this little room, and Livengood comes bursting through. He says, where is that SOB? I'm going to kill him. All muddy. Oh, God.
Oh.
That one, and the one other Nick Som story I'll tell you is that some guys got in trouble in Longview, Texas. They'd been charged with trespassing. And the sheriff from Gregg County came into the briefing and he said, I'm looking for Doug Adam, Dave Livengood, and 2 other people. And we're all sitting there. Are they here? And everybody said, no, they left. You know. So now the Nationals comes the next year, and we're at Burl's, and Jackie's having the event director party, and Sheriff Matthews shows up, and we were sitting out on Burl's deck, and when he came around the corner, Burl said, what the hell are you doing in your uniform? And because apparently Matthews only wore his uniform one other time when President Carter came here. And he said, well, I've got a warrant for arrest for a Dave Livengood.
Oh, no.
And Dave was in helping Jackie do dishes, and I saw the look on his face through the window, and Matthews saw it too. And he walked in, and he said, are you Mr. Livengood? And I saw Dave say yes. And Matthews said, he knew right then the look on Livengood's face, he better back off even though he had his uniform on. And he said to Livengood, would you like to know who did this? And Livengood says, I know who did it. So they read the warrant, and the warrant was for Mr. Dave Livengood for trespassing, and the judge signed it, you've been had. But it was all Nick.
And did he have to hide on the toilet again?
I mean, this time was serious. Dave had it, Sheriff Matthews had his uniform on.
Yeah.
I want to crawl under the table. But
So I heard you say yesterday you never rode in a balloon. How could you beat his sister and he didn't say, "Come on, sis, let's go for it"?
Well, you know Nick. He wasn't around very often, really, and but poor Kit, his niece. You want to tell how you almost got up in a balloon?
Well, so I wrote that little thing out on his thing, and I said it all there, but I grew up with this very scary, intimidating Uncle Nick. And it just as a little girl, I would watch this guy roll in some dilapidated truck, van, whatever. But the two dogs, Zep and Midas, were always a part of the package. I saw my grandmother, 4'10", just, get everything in order, get the nicest apron on, get the house set, and everything needed to be perfect for this guy when he walked through the door. And he walked through the door as if he owned the joint, and all hell in a happy basket. It happened, and I watched this all for my first 10 years, and then I start thinking, this is an act. He's got a big heart. He's got a good soul, because I know his parents, Can this guy be a product of those two people? And she's not kidding when she's saying she wants to crawl under the table. I'm not kidding you. But if you guys were his life and his family and his balloon family, and without getting all choked up, yesterday was kind of like a closure for me, because you were everything to him.
Well, that's very nice, and I'm sure they thought a lot of him too. It's too bad that he had that act or whatever, if it was, because you really needed to know him. Now, because like some of them, like Eric, wherever he is, I don't see him.
He's back there.
Oh, back there. He said when he was coming about Jim, he said, everybody knows the balloonist Jim. I want to talk about the man Jim. Now, can you talk about the man Nick for his family?
Well,
Or was it all lumped together in one thing?
Nick was probably, he was cantankerous. There's no doubt about that. And as I mentioned yesterday, my two daughters had the same opinion for a while. And then they figured him out. And then they said, oh no, that's not going to work anymore. Anyway, oh, okay.
So how did their attitude, or what did they change that?
I think they hit it head on. They said, okay, come on, you're going to be a bad guy, let's go.
No.
Let's go play.
Let's go play. I'm taking your dogs and
Yeah, no, I mean, they would babysit the dogs when he was in Albuquerque.
No.
So, but, if you needed anything, if you had something that wasn't working, just any kind of problem that you had, he was more than willing to just step in and help. That was true when he was working with events, when we were doing a lot of problem solving and record stuff. He had one of those abilities. He's one of those people who could look at a problem. It'd take a while because he'd need to go through 38 different solutions. And he'd finally come up with one, and some of them were elegant and some of them were so simple you went, how the hell didn't I think about that, But there wasn't anything he wouldn't do for you.
Something that I think that Nick, even with women, if they cowered away, then he would take advantage of that. He was not fond of that.
Yeah, he'd just
if any woman would stand up and show him what she was worth and what she knew, Nick could settle right down, and it's like a peer-to-peer thing, and so cowering away from Nick was not the way to have fun with Nick.
Now, if any of you have anything to add when something comes up, don't be afraid, because I don't know who some of you
I
are
don't think
with
he ever
or not.
intimidated my two daughters.
The two oldest ones? Or
Maybe
the two
I had
young-
already intimidated Megan.
I was going to say, what the hell has changed for him?
No, I will say that when we came out the first year that Nick ran the event here in Indianola, and I had not met him before, and I was maybe like 13, and my dad said, no, don't mess around with Nick. He doesn't like women, he doesn't like kids. And you're both, so. But I will say that I think with Eric's assessment that if you just came in and were not cowed by him and just were like, well, okay, you may not like women and you may not like kids, but I'm gonna, I'm here, and And he used, I remember him saying to me, "You're all right for a girl." And he was always, you know, he always, although he would say things like that, he was always very, like he would, "Come on over and see the dogs," you know,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
"Oh, watch Zeppy, he's mean. You know,
Yeah. Zepp was mean.
take your
He
ring
was.
off." But he, you know, he did. So he had that reputation, and I think what
Yeah.
you said about realizing at a certain point, that can't be what's really going on
Exactly.
there.
And I have to say, in the past 10 years, well, 15 years, I just decided, okay, this show's over, buddy. And I am who I am, and we had an absolutely fantastic relationship for like the past 15 years.
Oh, that's good. Maybe you just had to be old enough. Because
Yeah.
when, you know, I always ask for words from the different people of, when you think of this person, either a word or phrase, what would you think? And some of the words that came with Nick, I'm going, really? And I thought, okay, they obviously know him on a different side than we ever knew him. But it was pretty interesting. You gonna say, Debbie?
Yeah. I spent some time with Nick when he was building his aircraft in Cincinnati with Bud Newhouse. And we had a lot of times out on the patio, on the porch, while, you know, at the hangar there. And, you know, well, growing up with a grandfather, a father, and a business partner, and a ballooning partner who were all gruff individuals, those don't scare me. And, you know, I was always the girl who just, oh, that looks fun, let's go do that. So, yeah, you know, it was fun to spend some time with Nick just in a relaxed situation. And, you know, do you want to ride in the aircraft? Well, not till you finish that part there. But, yeah, it was fun out there. Bud was doing banner towing, and Nick did some of that with him, and they were kind of an interesting partnership of you know, two gruff guys out there doing their, you know, but, you know, you hear them going, yeah, okay, got it, yeah, you know. But Nick was always a nice person to me. But he was definitely in the gruff category of, we just, you know, it's just the way they talk. So always very, I like everybody in this room, into ballooning and making it work for everybody.
I got a call one day on the radio from a pilot that was out in the country, and he said, "Would you please call Nick and tell him to quit stabbing my pie balls with his aircraft?" He would find certain pilots that he didn't appreciate putting up pie balls, and he'd wait till they get up there, and then he'd take his plane and run into them and break the pie ball. And one of the pilots that he disliked the most was the one called. Apparently every pie ball that came out of that trailer, Nick was gunning for it. But the other funny thing about Nick is, I know he loved those dogs, and of course they stayed in the cooler. So if you wanted a beer, you were going to get a beer
With
cold with dog hair on it. And he trained Zepp that cows, if you told Zepp to go get a cow, Zepp would stand there and look at you like, "You fool." And Nick would say, "Elephants, Zepp, elephants." And Zepp would go right after the elephant, which was the cow. He trained Zepp. So we came around the corner, and I was riding with Nick, and there's Midas in there, and Zepp was in my lap. And Zepp saw an elephant. And the window was down, and as we turned the corner, Zepp made a dash right out the window, and Nick's response was, as Zepp goes flying out the window at about 15 miles an hour, "Zepp, get back in here!" Zepp was, I thought that dog would be dead, and went back, and Zepp's like this, and gets back in the van.
Oh. That obviously was his kids. That's what he could handle. So
I don't know how many of you lived through Nick decided that hydrogen was a good thing to use for pie balls.
Oh, I ended up in trouble over that.
And so there were evenings here, I remember, where we didn't have anything to do, and we'd fill up a pie ball with hydrogen, and then we'd attach an M80 to it, and put a part of a cigarette on the end as a fuse, and send it off, and wait and see how it went.
Nick and I did that one night. You guys had a trailer down there.
Yeah.
Nick and I were outside and we had these little tanks you'd light and they'd spin around and fire one shot and then blow up. Those little fireworks things. And I had a bunch of dynamite fuse in my car. And
As one does.
Nick says,
Like a good little jolly. Hey, who doesn't have that?
so Nick said, you know, we could put a piece of dynamite fuse on a hydrogen balloon and just let it go. So I cut a piece of fuse and he filled his balloon with hydrogen and it was about that big. And we sat there and I lit the fuse and he let loose the balloon. And of course it was dark, so it was a black balloon, you know, where in the hell to go? And pretty soon,
Down the street.
there was a fireball that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger till it got about 25 feet across and then the sound got there. You know, it was like, whoa. And the next thing we knew, the sheriff's office, cops are running all over. Des Moines Tower had called to report an airplane crash.
Oh, no.
They were all over town looking for a down airplane.
Oh,
Nick and I are sitting there like, we had nothing to do with it.
oh, my.
Well, he always loved to do pranks and stuff, and because of the way he was, I'm kind of the opposite. But one time, we fed horse meat to our cats, I guess it was, or dogs, I don't know. Anyway, Mom had stew made for us for dinner. Well, the one thing I finally did, I cooked up the horse meat and put it in his stew. And he liked it really a lot. And he had a second helping. That's probably the best thing I ever did.
Is this the first time he's hearing that?
Yeah. And did you tell him that?
Yeah, many years later.
Oh, many years later. So were there just the two of you?
Yes, yeah. And he's 3 years older, and he went through high school in 3 years. I don't think he went to many classes, but
He graduated?
yes, he did. And then he went on to college, and he would not buy the socks to be in the ROTC, so he quit college and went in the Army. And that's where I think he got into the geology.
In the Army?
Yeah, somehow, and then he lost part of a lung in Okinawa and came back, and so he went kind of straightened up a little.
A little?
And went back to college, yeah. And so I really never lived with him after like grade school, really, I guess. But so it was always interesting, though.
So any of the rest of you have something you want to add about Nick? Go ahead, Eric.
No.
That's fine.
Nope.
I do have one other comment that came out of some comments from the girls back
Okay.
there. Is that I somewhere have a picture of my two daughters and 2 or 3 of their friends lying in the back of a pickup truck sleeping. Somewhere out ballooning, you know, because they were just communal trucks.
Yeah.
And you take all the kids and put them in one truck, so you knew where they were. You give them a whole box of powdered donuts. Everything was good.
Okay, everything's good. Yep, that's good. All right, we're going on into Eleanor. If no one else has anything more to say, good, bad, or indifferent about the other two.
I don't think the
You
statute
sure
of
you,
limitations is
Eric, you don't want to put your 2 cents in?
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Now, Eleanor, with you are the. I loved your story about the fog and everything, and how it goes. And in ballooning, we don't even want to get up in the fog. So that was pretty interesting. But what would you say when you think of? I want to know about you were in the beginning and the end of the Balloon Federation. Not, it wasn't Balloon Federation. The
Balloon Club of America.
Balloon Club of America. Now, most of these people don't know a whole lot about that.
Well,
What
actually,
can
it didn't
you
change
say?
much through the years. We followed exactly the same inflation procedure. We used illuminating gas until the 70s, and that's about it. But you do encounter some problems, of course. I have to tell the one where we went up And we didn't go very far, and we landed in what looked like a perfectly open field. But there comes a farmer with 2 hunting dogs and a gun. And he wouldn't let me out to bring in the chase car, and he wouldn't let the chase car in to take us out. But Tony Fairbanks, who was really a troubleshooter, I think there was a little bit exchange of money, and he did it. But fundamentally, our procedure didn't change at all. We used exactly the same envelopes. In general, we flew with the 80,000 for the obvious reason you could take up more people. We used illuminating gas. In the beginning, it was a little bit troublesome because we didn't have a permanent inflation site. We kind of looked for wide open spaces with a gas company nearby and made arrangements. But ultimately, we started flying out of the Valley Forge airport, and when that was sold for a golf course, the gas company put a permanent main in for us for the Wings Field.
So I don't know what illuminating gas. What makes that different? Oh, cooking
Ordinary
gas.
cooking
Okay,
gas.
all right. So I'm sorry. Thank
But
you.
it got to be expensive because we had to pay not only for the man to turn on the gas, we weren't allowed to do it, but we had to have a supervisor also present. That's just the way it was. You know.
Now, in those days, did you fly in the morning or during the day, or because I
We made
know
a big effort to, like hot air balloons, to be ready to go aloft at dawn. But I think I mentioned yesterday, we went out to the field between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. because it took at least 4.5 to 5 hours to inflate the 80,000. And you don't get much help at 2 a.m.
even in hot air ballooning, you don't get that much help either.
But as the day went along, a few people that are aware of that we were flying would come in and help us. But in general, the main help was at the end of the flight when you landed. People kind of appeared, I don't know, out of their works and just were there to help. And one of the things, we had no direct contact between the balloon and the ground. The arrangement that we made when we went up was we agreed on a call number. And the first thing we were supposed to do when we landed was to call that number and give them a location. But in reality, it was always the last thing we did because you were busy doing too many other things. Yeah.
So when I've been out to Albuquerque and when they were just mainly doing without the quick fill, and they said it would take a ton of sand when you had all the bags around there to do the old fill. And so where did you come up with a ton of sand every time you wanted to fly?
You ran pretty fast around the balloon trying to keep the diamond on the same even line, because in the early mornings, basically there were never more than 4 or 5, you know. So you really had to hustle to keep it down. And the 80,000 was approximately 54 feet in diameter. So the more people you had to help you with the sandbags, the easier it was. But you just kept moving, you know. But every once in a while there would be one hanging up there and you would be down here. And so somebody had to scurry up to get down. I never did that.
No, you never did that.
I never volunteered to do that.
Well, from the list of everything else you did, it was kind of like Jim's daughters. They got a different assignment all the time. They got good at doing whatever. Yeah. So what was your favorite thing? If you got to pick what you were going to do, what would it be?
Not too much. You kind of looked around and saw what needed to be done and just did it. But what was I going to say? Oh, landings, you had really a super abundance of pop. Except one time we were flying and there was a thunderstorm. I mean, you could see that thunderstorm. Well, I really should give you the rationale of why we were up there at all.
Yeah, thunderstorm. Yeah.
We got involved with disc jockeys, And it was supposed to be a 3-balloon race, but it rained the first day. It was too windy the second day. It rained the third day. The fourth day, another rain. And in the meantime, the public is pressuring the disc jockeys, when are you going to put this race on? So we got what was a marginal weather forecast in the morning. It said there would be thunderstorms in the afternoon. Well, you tried to believe that, and you decided to take a shot and go. So we did go, but I want to tell you, I think it was one of the few times that I was really scared, because when you got aloft, suddenly you saw this black, ominous cloud coming at you with great rapidity. So we looked for a landing site. Unfortunately, we were in kind of a congested area, but we finally did land outside the Graders Ford Prison.
Good place.
We weren't on the ground, I would say, a minute when the thunderstorm broke. Well, in a thunderstorm, you don't have help. They just disappear. But Pete Pellegrino was the pilot on that flight, and he went inside the jail and asked the warden whether he could supply some help. We would pay for it, of course. So that we came out, and big burly guys, you know, and they were very helpful. But Pete was grousing and complaining about the fact that he had a date that night, he was going to be late, and went on. And finally, one of the inmates said to him, "Man, I don't know what you're complaining about. I'm not going to be home for 20 years." I think the one trouble we had, which never was totally explained, a gas bag has a valve on the top, and we attach a manila rope to that. On the side of the gas balloon is a slit that is a commitment when you pull the red rope that is attached to that. But somehow when we went aloft, fortunately we had a very experienced pilot. The ropes had gotten switched, but he recognized from the resistance on the pull that he thought he was pulling the valve, but actually it was the rip panel. But he immediately stopped and we landed, you know. But that was a rarity. I don't know, there's no way you can check that. Once you've attached the ropes, you know, you're up in the air and you're good.
Yeah. So you have to attach them after they're in, they're just not like in a balloon, they're not all attached? No. Okay.
The rip panel is really a definite commitment for a landing, because that opens the side of the balloon and there's a rapid exodus of gas. You want to be sure you're going to land.
It's a good place, right?
The trouble with a balloon is you can't be sure where you're going to land. You think you're all right, but you're never sure about the ground wind. So really, the bigger area that's clear and wide open, the safer you are. But we were ballooning basically in Philadelphia, which is a pretty congested area. And in general, our flights were southeast. And well, we'd had to keep in mind that there was a big ocean out there, so our flights were never really long, except the first one, mine. Mine was 75 air miles.
Really?
You know, when you're talking air miles, it's not necessarily 75 miles on the ground, because you have to cross bridges and roads, you know. So when we landed there, it was a good 2 hours before they found us. But we were with a pleasant company, a family that turned out well.
That's good. Now, if you're doing, I mean, now hydrogen or helium is so expensive, and like chicken, what'd you say, kitchen oil? Kitchen?
It was $1 1,000 cubic feet.
Oh, okay. All right.
But don't forget that supervisor and manager.
Okay, that added a little more to the top, yeah. Okay.
But the two smaller balloons, the 35,000 and the 19,000, had to be inflated with hydrogen for lift.
Do you remember how much the hydrogen was in?
Well, I remember that for the 19,000, it was $1 a cubic foot because it cost $2,000 to inflate that. We never inflated that unless somebody else was paying for it.
But yeah. Well, now, you know, it's so expensive they fly until the gas gets tired. But you had short trips in yours.
Well, we flew with, most of our trips, I would say, were about an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
As long as you weren't getting too close
Yeah.
to the Atlantic City.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, that part is kind of like ballooning, you know, hot air ballooning as you go an hour, hour and a half until you're going to run into something else. Okay, well, that's good. All right, now, you, like Peter Pellegrino and
Don Picard, Francis Shield.
and all these that started out, all right, and then you said that began, like, in the history that, with that, the other one.
Tony Fairbanks?
What?
Tony Fairbanks?
Yeah, and all these people, who got the idea that you wanted to start a balloon club?
Oh, Tony Fairbanks, there was no question about that.
Okay, and
he was the one who got the balloons from the Naval Air Station in Lakehurst. You know, it was who we heard it from seems to be kind of ambivalent. I've read this person, that person, that. But the important part was that Tony did go and he did get the balloons from the Naval Air Station in at Lakehurst. They were remainders from the blimp program. The United States was training primarily during the war years. Our balloons were pretty old. By the time we got them, some of them were already 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
By the 70s, they were good 50, almost 60 years old. You know.
And they were still
So they were ready
pliable?
to retire to a permanent rest.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember I talked to Tracy Barnes, and he was a parachuter, and every time he came home, he brought a parachute home, and it cost him $5. And then when he finally got out, he put all these parachutes together to make a balloon. And so I was kind of wondering, you know, if these were actually the whole balloon, or if you put them together, but you had the whole balloon. And then just
well,
for that.
Actually, we were the only balloon club. We were the whole ballooning community in the United States. Roughly 5 years later, the Akron people formed a balloon club. And incidentally, the Akron Balloon Club and the balloon, we were never very modest. The Balloon Club of America joined together to form the Balloon Federation in 1961. So they're the granddaddies of the.
So
I cannot believe how the ballooning has expanded through the country. You know, we thought of ourselves as being very special. We were the only people ballooning in the United States. But now it's national. It's
internet.
For me, it's unbelievable.
No.
When I see this Texas, other foreign countries.
I didn't know the East Coast was still part of the United States.
I love Texas. It's really remarkable.
So, can you name all the people who started with your group?
Yes. Tony Fairbanks, Don Picard, Pete Pellegrino, Connie Wolf, Pete Wood.
And yourself.
Wow.
And so, and how long were you a group before this Akron group?
I was long with the group. I was until they would no longer sell gas to us. Basically, I would say the beginning of the 70s when we had the gas crunch, because neither the gas companies nor gas corporations that sold items like hydrogen could justify selling it to us because they considered us a sport club and it was just a one-time use. So in reality, that was the null and the death of the ballooning as we knew it. And it was, I would say, the beginning for the push for the hot air balloon. Because if you wanted to fly, you had to have a hot air balloon, you know.
Well, you know, maybe if you'd let Malcolm join, he'd have had money to pay for that gas.
Yeah, we thought of that too late.
I can't imagine too many people turn him down.
When he got his balloon, we were very willing to go over and help him. And he was very willing to feed us.
So, good. Do you have anything to say?
He remembers a lot. Well, the best part was we got to go different places. Aunt Eleanor would take us with her when she would go to her events, and we got to go to Rhode Island where all the mansions were. And that was a wonderful trip.
Interesting place to put a balloon up on the edge of the ocean.
Yeah.
Looking right down.
Hopefully the wind going that way, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it was at the jazz festivals in Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah,
A couple years we did that.
Yeah.
So did you get to chase the bags or move the bags?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Plenty of left.
Definitely. Yeah. Diamond to diamond. Diamond down. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. And how about the time you remember the other day? Going to the Lancaster.
Oh yeah, Park City Mall. They actually put the balloon up in the center of the mall because it was raining, nobody could fly.
That would have been good. But, you know, if it took so long to do it, I mean, they must have started at 2 in the morning and then put it up.
It wasn't fast.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what kind of gas were they using inside
Yeah.
the mall? That's
At the time, I was too young to know
Do you
anything.
remember, Eleanor, what kind of gas you were using inside the mall?
Here.
Do you remember what kind of gas they were using inside the mall?
Food fight?
Hydrogen?
We could not have used cooking gas.
Yeah.
So I would guess it was probably one of the smaller blooms, and it would have been hydrogen.
What?
That would still be
Well, in those days, you could not get helium. It was under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Mines and simply was not for sale. When the German government was putting up the Hindenburg, they tried to buy some of the helium from the United States. The United States, no. But I do think there were some security issues involved there that added to their negative answer, you know.
I had a very liberal fire marshal at the time.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
Don't do it, yeah.
There's the one, yeah.
Do you have some more? Anything more? All right, Debbie, you were going to say something?
Actually, I'd like, Eleanor, could you tell us about the Balloon Federation of America, when the officers were chosen and the, you know, like, do you...
Well, basically all I can tell you is just what I have addressed. We formed in 1952. The Akron people formed in 1954. The Balloon Federation formed in 1961. And it was a joint operation of the two clubs. I could not tell you, well, the officers, oh yes, the officers.
Some of those people are on the wall, so we want to hear more. We want the story of the day.
Pete Pellegrino was in charge of the control tower in Philadelphia, so he already had an affiliation with the FAA. And he was the one who approached the FAA for forming a balloon federation. The officers occurred when Pete Pellegrino, Francis Shield, and Eleanor Videla were seated together. Pete said, "I'll be president, Franny will be vice president, and Eleanor will be secretary." That's how we...
That's exactly what we want to hear. Not a place on the wall, you know.
Yeah.
Part of ballooning history, yes.
As I sit here, that's true.
All right. It's recorded now.
So, he must run just a tight ship like you do.
Anyway, I met him once, and he was an interesting guy. But I think in '61, I believe they had a national championship, and it was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I believe the champion was a student, had a student ticket and won, and I think that right after the championship, he hit a set of power lines and killed himself.
Yeah, he was 17 years old.
Dick Pollard.
Yeah.
Pollard, right?
Yeah, and Dick Pollard, and we have his nice award out there. It's a bowl, one of those silver bowls. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
I remember when I came here, I think the first year I was here, I believe '72, and I think that was the first year that the whole championship was held in Indianola, because I think before that, the tryouts were held here, and then they went to the state fairgrounds
That was in
Des Moines.
70. So 71 is the very first one. All of it was here.
Okay. I think I was here in '72, and it was all held here.
Yeah, yeah. They decided that, well, Ed Yost, you hadn't had a one for like 3 or 4 years, and they wanted something to do. They were getting more pilots, and so they said, okay, we need some place to go. Maybe if we have it centrally located, maybe people will come from all over. Well, Ed Yost was, his neighbors had gone to Simpson, and they said, well, Iowa is in the center. No, it's not Ohio, Idaho or someplace else. Anyway, and maybe you could work with Simpson. And so they attempted that, and Simpson was looking for something to do with their alumni, and the Simpson and the Indianola Chamber, which was run by Marlene Wall, which you met yesterday, who's running this show again, and she's been in ballooning from the very beginning. Anyway, then they came here, and they had it the week of the state fair. So they had 3 days here to practice, and then they went to the state fair and flew out of the center of the race track, and just one flight, and we have pictures of the people that were here. And then they liked flying morning and evening, and they were here for 18 years before they started moving around. And so technically we've had ballooning since 1970. We've had a museum, not here, but since 1972, and we've been in 6 different buildings in Indianola until, like they said, Leo gave us $100,000 seed money he said we needed to stop moving, so, and the rest is history. So that's how we're doing that.
I wanted to say that, you drive over to where the balloons inflated, and there were 100 balloons down to 32 in those years for this, after the cut. And you drive over to that field this week, and you're like, where did we all fit? It sure looked a lot bigger. The trees are bigger now, so that kind of makes it.
But keep in mind, in those early ones, you could fly as many flights in the morning as you wanted, the CNTEs, which...
That was before my time.
But you could fly...
I know. I think that changed in 76, 77. John, you might know that.
74, 75, I think. But you could make as many flights as you wanted in the morning, and then after 3 days, they took the best of your scores, and that's how they made the cut. And after that, of course, the cut got to be a vicious kind of thing where everybody would go to the briefing, and then they'd get called down and given a pink ribbon and sent downtown, which was kind of cruel, but
Oh, really, huh?
Was the pink ribbon that you didn't make it?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, they said, and it's kind of like, okay, John, stand up.
You can leave now.
Leave the room. I mean, literally, pick up your pink ribbon on the way out the door. You need to go to a briefing somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, that was always, you went to the non-competitors briefing then, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, literally,
Really?
You got sent out of the main meeting
And was Nick running this?
No.
Pink ribbon.
That was in the early
It sounds like
Yeah, it got a little kinder and gentler, but not
much.
It still was kind of, the hurt was there.
Well, guys got so they'd look at the score sheet, and if they didn't make it, they just didn't show up.
Yeah, I would inherit them.
Very true.
All right, Debbie, do you have anything to add?
I just want to share that the FAI was approached Tony and the Balloon Club of America to fly internationally, and the government actually subsidized their group competing in the international flights that they had over there, and the majority of them were done by the threesome, Francis Shields, Pete Pellegrino, and Eleanor. And she has some great stories. If you would like to hear, I'm sure she might share one of those stories that she...
Well, I think the one that stands in my mind, the three of us, how do I put this? We were basically the first Americans being exposed to the foreign community as balloonists. They were very cordial to us, and we were invited to fly in Belgium, outside of the race, Germany, and Switzerland. The flight that I remember, because it was my longest flight, it was with Alfred Eckert, a German balloonist. We were inflated at a chemical corporation, so the balloon was filled with hydrogen. It was a 35,000, and we did require. We flew for 4 hours, which for us was a long flight. But it wasn't the end of the flight. We landed, got out of the balloon, walked down the road, and at the first guest house, we had breakfast. Then we walked back, got in the balloon, and flew for 4 more hours. And landed in Austria. In those days, balloonists from the respective countries were not eager to cross borders, but we did. Oh, and also was the balloon flight where I can't remember why it happened, but we were good. There was a toast of cognac in the morning. I am not a cognac drinker. So I'm leaning over the basket, and I hear the one German say to the other, "Die Frau is krank." Now, I'm not a linguist, but I know what he was saying. But I remember that as a long, but they were very, very cordial in every respect. I salute them.
How about when I named you Princess?
The what?
Princess Salzkammergut.
I think it may have been that same flight, because maybe that's why they were pouring out the condom. They had a practice. I'm trying to remember exactly what the practice was. But in any event, suddenly I'm christened. I'm christened by the name of the place I'm over. So unofficially, I'm called Princess Kammerkat.
Kammerkat, okay.
I cannot spell it.
So who christened you, the pilot or who? How did this happen?
In a balloon in Europe, you always have to have a European pilot along with you. So always, except when we were flying, they didn't enforce that. It was either Franny, a pilot, Pete, a pilot, and I didn't have my balloon pilot's license until 1963. But very gracious all the way down. Well, one of the things, we were the American representative of 2 FAA-sanctioned races. And as as an American, it was very stirring to hear the national anthem played as you rise up in the air. Even thinking about it, I kind of get tears in my eyes. But they did that with everybody. But the control of the balloon race was utterly and completely in the hands of a balloonmeister. There were no general public wandering around the balloons. It was fenced out. You were welcome to watch, but you were not welcome to enter in that area. And they had people that actually did the handling of the shifting of the balloons and controlling the inflation of the envelopes. Yeah, we weren't used to that.
That's the way they do it in Albuquerque.
Well, I would say ballooning in Europe, at least in those days, was not for the average man. Basically, most of them, I would say, were well-to-do. You know, it was.
I think it's here too.
It was. They're thick. They're thick.
Yeah. So, and how many with your races? About how many balloons were there in the race? I've seen pictures. You know.
I would guess maybe
paper,
20 to 25. Not expansive like Albuquerque,
Yeah.
where there were a couple hundred. But very friendly. All very friendly and very formal too. You know, they had always had a dinner spoken in a foreign language, so I never understood a word they said.
What was the dress over there? You know, because here it's pretty casual. Was it formal?
Not there.
Not there? Okay.
The men had, well, it looked like a hunting outfit. And women were almost nil. Yeah.
Anybody
I
have
think
any
I can
questions
remember
you'd
the
like to
ways-
ask her? Or anything you'd like to know about
Nina
it?
Bozeman was probably the foremost woman balloonist there.
Yeah,
She was a German.
Nini.
She flew a long time.
Yeah.
What? Who is it?
Nini Bozeman. I met her on the CIA meeting.
She was a well-known balloonist.
She was.
yeah.
I knew one. I met one lady in
Yeah.
Switzerland. I can't think of her name, but her father helped start the Swiss.
Regular.
Yeah,
Regular.
I met her.
Dugner, yeah.
She was quite a lady. So.
I have a question. I've never been able to figure out what is cooking gas. What
Coal gas.
actually is it?
It's coal gas.
Coal gas.
Well,
Coal
how do you
gas.
make it? What is,
You-
what,
you
what,
bake-
why was it?
You bake coal.
Okay, and it produces and that's what you pump into the balloon?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
did?
that's when you used to have the old gasometers in town.
Okay.
The big tank that would slide up and down.
I never
That was
knew that.
Oh, you're not that old. That's
Well, speaking of being not that old, can I make a comment about some of
Sure.
the stuff that's in the museum that I find remarkable, and maybe Leslie and Jim can address that. I know, John, I'm not sure of you, but it's remarkable. I love collecting things, and I restored. I started flying in '74, and I bought the hot rod of Berners at the time, 4-barrel Raven, and you know it was the more horsepower is better theory, and as time went on, I went backwards and I found a 1969 S40 with a single barrel, and I made sure it was airworthy, and in fact even annualed it, and I still have it. I flew it twice, once across the airport just to see if it would, and then I flew it cross country, which I don't know if cross country was the right term, but I find it remarkable when you look around at all these balloons and the contraptions that were flown on a regular basis. This pre-72 era practically, they weren't just balloonists, they were daredevils.
Yeah.
And they talk about this young man who was killed shortly after the first national championships. Boy, it's easy to see why. The balloons were largely uncontrollable. I mean, if you couldn't put much in them, and to recover from a descent was any kind of a big descent was almost impossible. You really had to plan your flight very, very carefully.
Well, they had cross-felt variometers in them that had 1, 2, and 3x settings, and if you had people in the basket with you, sometimes they were button pushers or button turners.
Yeah.
And I was training a guy that was in aerospace engineering at Ohio State, and he was a button turner, and he wouldn't leave stuff alone. And of course, there's a Toucan Raven, and it was a 56,000. with the welded aluminum basket, and he'd turned the variometer over to 3x, which actually meant it was almost non-existent as far as sensitivity. And I didn't catch it, and we started down, and I thought, well, you know, we're coming down pretty fast. And we burned all the way into the ground and crunched into the ground probably 800 foot a minute or whatever. And then we both ended up with bloody shins, and I looked over and he turned the thing to 3x instead of 1x.
Yeah.
And so for every mark, it was 3 times what it would have been on 1x. And that was, you know, and of course you had a bicycle handle grip, you remember those, that you regulated. And I was told the pilot lights never work, so we had a piece of tape across those, and we just used a bypass valve. But we had a pilot light that was 4 feet high all the time.
You had to fly with strikers, even with the any 4-barrel Raven or balloon. You up until probably in the late 76, 77 or so, you had strikers everywhere. I mean, in your hands. And
Yeah,
the side and
well, when
everything else, you just
Dave Schaefer just brought his,
Yeah.
and he has 6. He says, I wear them around my neck, I had them here, and he said, I never went anywhere without these.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, the other thing
Talking about
happened
the
is-
two-burner was the S60 that Sid built,
Yeah.
the Roadrunner, had a two-burner system on it. And if it started down, you just started burning.
Yeah.
You know, I flew that as a hair balloon a number of times, and it was a really interesting experience.
Well, you know, when you originally got your license, you just didn't get a private license, you got a commercial license.
Right.
Because it was the only one.
Or you could take the gas test, because they came up with a test. And so I was told, you know enough about meteorology, here's the simple things about gas balloons you need to know on the test. Just take the gas test, and that way you'll get a gas license and a hot air license. So that's what I did, but my instructor said, don't worry about it, because everybody gets 55 the first time. That's the federal way of shocking you. So I went to Willow Run and took the test, and we waited around the office, and the test came back, and he got a hold of the paperwork before I did, and because he was curious, he also wanted to tell me that I got 55 just like he did. And I opened it up and I said, I thought everybody got 55. Well, he said everybody does get 55. He said everybody I know got 55. I said, well, I got an 82. Yeah, she said, that can't happen. But you had to go to 10,000 feet to get the commercial ticket. And I guess we were just stupid enough to believe that anybody was going to ever check that you'd been to 10,000 feet. So I went to 10,000 feet with my instructor. He was about 6'6", wore a Swedish Pam with a little top knot on it. And we get to 10,000 feet, and he said, now shut everything off. So we shut everything off. And the basket's moving. You know, the gondol's moving. I'd never been to 10,000 feet before, so what the hell did I know was supposed to happen? And I looked over, and he's sitting on the 20-gallon laydown. He's just like this. And I said, are you okay? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, we've got 2 panels out of the top. You know, they were Velcro top. And we didn't know the calendared nylon shrunk. And so it had shrunk, and the Velcro wouldn't hold it. And I said, well, we've got 2 panels out of the top. And he said, oh my God, what do we do? I said, well, I was hoping you would tell me. And so I used the whole 20 gallons getting to the ground, because it burned all the way to the ground, and it melted the hook to the pile right outside where the hole was. And so when you go to pull a red line, now you're pulling the whole top because the thing is melted together.
Oh, wow.
So we finally both got a hold of it, got out of the basket and held on to it, and the balloon took a jerk and we ripped the top out. Went right back to Raven the very same day, and their fix was to put a pleat in the top.
That became an airworthiness directive, actually.
So when you expanded the fabric, the pleat would open up.
Yeah, they pleated the entire circumference, and and so that it wouldn't happen again.
And did it happen again?
No, it was much more reliable. But not entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, ripping a Velcro panel was a little bit like the rip on the gas balloon. It was the final solution.
Because Whitaker he tells the story. You know, when they started, I mean, he said we didn't have to have a license. We didn't know when to fly. We just flew, and if we had time, he said, I'd have a nice day, and it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd say, okay, I'll go fly, and he'd get in the thermal, and I'd be thrown here and there, and then I'd call everybody, don't be flying in the middle of the afternoon. And then he said you never knew what was going to happen. So every time somebody did something that worked, they'd let everybody know. So he says, and then we started, and they just had one license, and it went just to a commercial.
Well, initially, if you had another license, you could send $2 in.
Right.
And they would send you a balloon rating.
Yeah.
Do you mean like an airplane license?
Yeah, right. And you just send in the $2 and a Kellogg box top. Send you a balloon license.
Oh, okay. So what did it take when you said you had to go up 10,000? Now you don't have to go up 10,000. But what else? I mean, that was probably your main thing right there. But
yeah, I mean, it was just eight hours. You were a commercial pilot. And then on July 4th at noon, I went to Adrian. They did a commercial job out of downtown Adrian. July 4th, 100 degrees. I mean,
middle of the afternoon.
Middle of the afternoon.
Middle of the afternoon, yeah.
Who knew?
Well,
you know.
When I made my 10,000 foot flight, it was one of the, to qualify for balloon listing, you had to do that. It was in the 80,000. We had, as it happened, we made 2 flights that day. The first one was a short one, and Franny Shields was the pilot, and I was in both flights. The second one, it wasn't planned to make a 10,000 foot flight, but it was a beautiful sunny day, and you didn't have to do much. The balloon kept wafting up. But then came Mother Nature, clouds. And very rapidly the balloon started to cool down. But we had gone up, and we were I think 98, almost 10,000, when the balloon just clouded the whole sky. And the balloon started down. Now, unlike a hot air balloon, which responds pretty quickly to a change in your temperature, when a gas bag that size starts coming down, just keeps going down and getting faster and faster. Well, all the ballast went out, all the sandwiches went out, anything that looked portable was thrown out. I want to tell you, we were all mighty glad when we got down on the ground. No ballast at all. And insult to injury, we landed in a cemetery.
Oh, well, I hope you missed all the stones too, huh?
But we met the qualification for the 10,000.
Yeah, it's kind of funny he's talking about throwing stuff overboard when I was teaching Nick how to fly.
Oh, you got to teach him, huh?
In the gas balloon, yeah. For a long time, I think I started flying actually in gas in '75. And here in this country, when you went to a gas event, I remember flying with Dewey, and everything had to have a piece of tape on it with its weight. So that way you knew what you were throwing overboard.
Oh.
The secret was you had no idea how much weight you needed to throw overboard anyway, so it didn't really matter. And that ended fairly quickly when I took a piece of tape and put 185 and put it on Dewey. And Nick and I came up with the idea of how do you tell what you can throw away, and so we came up with the green tag, the silver tag, and the gold tag. So green tag was have at it, throw it away at will.
Like what?
Food,
like food.
Ballast, water,
Okay.
Anything that was replaceable easily. The silver tag said, think about it. Okay? Because if you're going to throw away your down jacket, it's going to be a little more expensive to replace. So that was the second line of ballast. The gold was the radios, the instruments.
Your pilot person.
Yeah. I did do that to Dewey one time. For a long time in gas balloons, we flew with parachutes.
Yeah.
And taking off in the Nationals here in 1980, Dewey's notorious for taking naps. And so
You mean
he
while
was,
he's flying?
well, I was flying and he was resting.
He was napping.
So I put my parachute on, and I sat up on the edge of the basket and said, Dewey, wake up. We've got a little problem, but I'm going for help. He never slept once. And then Nick was a classic when he took his first gas balloon ride. We left Albuquerque and the sun set and the balloon started cooling and he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I don't know, maybe we have a leak." "God damn, I paid $500 for this ride. We better not have a leak." And I said, "Nick, it's okay.
Okay.
This happens at night, okay? This is as it cools down. We're going to go down a little bit and then it'll be fine." And it's entertaining. Gas ballooning is a different sport because of the beauty, and particularly flying at night when you can lay back on the little bed that you've got in there and look up at all the stars around the balloon, and it's quiet. The balloon is probably turning a little bit, and it's just amazing.
I always wondered, why do they always start at night?
Because you can take off with more ballast.
Because it's
usually
cooler.
a little cooler, yeah.
Okay.
And that gives you the chance to fly on into the next day at least.
What are the requirements for the visibility during a night flight?
Same, day and night VFR are the same. Yeah.
Which is? For us people who don't know.
Yeah. 3 miles, clear clouds. I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think it's 3 miles clear cloud.
You know, and occasionally you end up with another, what we called an undercast, which meant you flew over a deck of clouds.
On top, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like her story.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the one spectacular thing, and you can see it in an airplane too, is called the flyer's halo. And when the sun comes up, you can see the shadow of the balloon on the clouds, and it has a rainbow all the way around it.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
And that's same in an airplane. I mean, you look out of the window of an airplane and you're right above the clouds, you see it, but then you look for a big hole in the clouds. They're always available.
When you talk shadow, I think of the shadow of the balloon on the ground, and you can follow that along.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to do when you're in the balloon.
Yeah. That's on my bucket list. I have a huge bucket list, but one of them is flying a gas balloon, possibly over the Alps. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I have to admit, I'm old-fashioned. When I kept hearing the word gas, I think, oh, they're talking cooking gas, but I very rapid along and learned you're talking hydrogen now.
So, do you guys have anything you want to add? Nothing? Everybody's had their piece? Said anything embarrassing?
I don't
Anything
think the
good?
statute of limitations has run out yet.
I don't think so either, but I just thought I'd ask. Because this is the kind of stuff I love. Because the young ones don't have these good stories. They don't have the memories. And this, I feel very thankful that you all came. And this will be video. We'll have a video. And I've asked you, all the groups, on how many. And we'll jump drive and 2 discs. And eventually it will be on YouTube. So the people can see what we see. Because I think this is so important. So I appreciate all of you coming in, taking your time, spending another day here, and thank you very much.